Although she was the eldest daughter of a noble family, she was treated like a maid by her younger sister.
渋い。入れ直して。
Seeing this, her father was indifferent and even tacitly approved of her sister's behavior. Mayo could only endure in silence. Even her lover was taken away by her sister. To consolidate the family's status, her father married her off to a nobleman she had never met. On Miyo's wedding day, there was no procession to send her off, and her dowry consisted only of a worn-out comb. The whole family was focused on her sister's wedding, and no one cared about Miyo's departure. All of this was because Mayo did not have a gift. In this ancient world, the royal family and nobles passed down superpowers from generation to generation. This ability was called a gift, and those who possessed it were known as gift users. The strength of the ability determined one's status. Miyo's father could control the wind, and her mother could cast illusions. But for some reason, Mayo did not inherit any abilities. Her stepmother's daughter, Kaya, awakened a powerful gift at the age of 3. As a result, Mayo was seen as a disgrace to the family, and her status was lower than that of a servant. Despite the cruel treatment, Mayo solemnly bid farewell to the family that had raised her. She touched the cherry tree her mother had planted one last time. Even though her father had cut it down, it still held memories of her mother. However, her sister and stepmother were very gloating about Miyo's plight. It was rumored that Miyo's fiancé, although a powerful gift user, was eccentric and ruthless. Many noble ladies had been engaged to him, only to be either driven away or killed. Mayo had also heard these rumors, but to her, it might be a form of liberation. After all, her current life couldn't get any worse. However, Mayo did not yet know that this unseen fiancé would completely change her life. Walking alone along the winding mountain road, Mayo finally arrived at her new home. Contrary to the luxurious mansion she had imagined, it was unexpectedly simple. Mayo habitually knelt to greet her fiancé, but received no response. She was used to being ignored and could only silently endure and wait. This man named Kudo was even colder and harsher than she had imagined, but his handsome face was quite different from the rumors.
ここでは私の言うことに絶対従え。出て行けと言ったら出て行け、死ねと言ったら死ね。異論反論は聞かん。
Mayo sensed that her future days would still be filled with pain and suffering. On her first day in her new home, Mayo was plagued by nightmares as usual. Since her mother passed away, she had never slept well. Early in the morning, Mayo went to the kitchen to cook, startling the butler. After all, Mayo was about to become the lady of the house, and kitchen chores should not be her responsibility. But Mayo insisted on making breakfast for Kudo herself, and it was much easier than cooking for her whole family as she used to. However, when Mayo brought the carefully prepared meal to Kudo, he didn't even look at it and instead stared at her with a murderous gaze.
先に食べてみろ。食べられないのか。
あ、いえ、旦那様より先。
毒でも持ったか。わかりやすいことだ。何が入ってるかわからないものは食え。
It turned out that Kudo had just sensed someone controlling a paper bird to spy on him, indicating that troublemakers had targeted his family. His first suspicion fell on the recently arrived Mayo. Kudo's attitude instantly shattered the last bit of hope in Miyo's heart. Although she was used to cold stares and harsh criticism, experiencing it again still caused her deep pain. Seeing this, the butler hurriedly pleaded for Mayo, believing that Mayo was a gentle and kind person, different from the other girls who had come before. Kudo was unmoved, believing that he bore the fate of his entire family and had to remain vigilant in all matters. Moreover, he commanded the country's special forces, whose soldiers were all various types of gift users. Thus, many people with ulterior motives sought to get close to Kudo. Kudo was about to assign a subordinate to investigate the paper bird when he noticed the soldiers were all focused on a bottle picked up from the street. Suddenly, a hair-like monster grew out of the bottle, showing no fear of the flames the soldiers cast at it. Seeing this, Kudo immediately stepped in to stop it. Upon investigation, Kudo learned that this monster was called Mushi, a manifestation of the grudges of deceased gift users. Those possessed by it would turn into zombies, and its appearance signaled a major crisis. To eliminate the Mushi, Kudo's superior arranged for a mysterious person named Arita to assist him. It wasn't until nightfall that Kudo, exhausted, returned home. Mayo was already waiting at the door, trying hard to explain the breakfast incident and constantly apologizing. Kudo noticed Miyo's tattered clothes and hands covered in calluses and frostbite, making it hard to believe she was a noble lady. He vaguely sensed that the girl before him had no ill intentions. Kudo then went to the bathroom to take a bath. Mayo was about to heat the water when she saw Kudo begin to use his gift. In just a moment, the water in the bathtub was heated, which amazed Mayo. Seeing her surprised expression, Kudo couldn't help but find it amusing, and his guard began to slowly relax. Realizing her rudeness, Mayo immediately apologized to Kudo.
今のは謝罪するところではない。謝るな。謝罪をしすぎると軽くなる。
Kudo instructed Mayo to put a packet of herbs in the bathtub before he bathed each time. Then he brought up the breakfast incident.
今朝の件は 警戒したに過ぎない。明日も作ってくれ。
Faced with Kudo's sudden gentleness, Mayo felt at a loss. She never dared to hope for kindness from others because she was born without a gift and felt unworthy of being in such a noble family. If Kudo knew this, he might immediately drive her away. The next morning, Mayo still got up early to cook breakfast for Kudo. This time, Kudo did not refuse and began to carefully taste it under Miyo's anxious gaze.
うまいな。
Tears unexpectedly welled up in Miyo's eyes. This was the first time in her life she had received someone's approval.
誰かにお料理を褒められたのは嬉しくて。
Seeing the girl cry, the usually indifferent Kudo also felt a bit at a loss. He couldn't imagine how a simple affirmation could make someone so emotional. What kind of hell had she been living in before? Kudo began to feel sympathy for this girl who was so used to apologizing, and he became even more curious about her past and background. So Kudo began to investigate Mayo and learned that she had lost her mother at a young age and was ostracized by her family because she had not awakened a gift. Seeing him seriously reviewing Miyo's information, Arita felt very curious. The rumoredly indifferent to women Kudo was paying such close attention to his fiancée. Perhaps even Kudo himself hadn't realized that the girl had slowly entered his heart. At home, he began to secretly stare at Mayo in a daze. Kudo learned from the butler that Mayo was plagued by nightmares every night, and he started to think about helping her alleviate her suffering. So he instructed Mayo to accompany him out shopping the next day. However, Mayo had never been shopping and thought she would be clumsy and cause trouble and embarrassment for Kudo. But before she could decline, Kudo had already arranged the itinerary for the next day in an unquestionable tone. The next day, the butler carefully dressed Mayo up and suddenly noticed that the calluses and scars on Miyo's hands had disappeared. Mayo recalled that it must have been the herbal water she put in Kudo's bathtub every day that had healed her hands. But the butler laughed upon hearing this because Kudo had always hated the smell of herbs, so it was clearly not prepared for himself. In an instant, Miyo's eyes were filled with astonishment. She felt joy but also more self-reproach. Mayo always believed that without a gift, she was unworthy of Kudo's concern. Dressed up, Mayo looked like Cinderella in glass slippers, pure and beautiful, causing Kudo to momentarily lose his composure. Realizing his lapse, Kudo immediately looked away, but his evasive gaze said it all. He had to admit that, for a brief moment, he felt a long-forgotten flutter in his heart. Kudo took Mayo to his usual clothing store. The shop owner was amazed, as she had never seen Kudo bring a girl before. Her enthusiastic questions made Kudo a bit embarrassed. When he looked at Mayo again, his heart continued to race. Mayo was staring intently at a piece of pink fabric, which piqued Kudo's curiosity. Mayo replied that her mother also liked to wear clothes made of this fabric. Kudo said nothing but made a mental note of it. Although Kudo's attitude towards her had softened considerably, Mayo still habitually spoke with her head down. However, Kudo immediately began to sternly correct her.
謝罪ではなく、素直な言葉を。私も嬉しい。
Rather than these formal manners, he preferred to see Mayo live as her true self. At the moment Mayo raised her head, her long dormant heart came alive again. For the first time since her mother, she longed to connect with someone. Today was also the first time in her life that Mayo had eaten dessert. Her eyes sparkled with joy, and she looked as innocent and adorable as a child. Seeing this, Kudo couldn't help but smile. The subtle feelings between them began to slowly grow. Their intimate behavior was seen by Arita from a distance. A flash of astonishment and jealousy crossed his eyes, but he didn't notice that Mushi had already appeared on the street. Because of these potential dangers, the country and Kudo's family were about to face a great catastrophe. And just as love-struck Mayo was basking in Kudo's gentleness, she was once again hit hard by reality. She ran into her vicious sister Kaya on the street. Kaya still mocked her and cursed her as a rat from the gutter. Mayo began to tremble uncontrollably, and painful memories once again flooded her mind, forcing her to lower her head. The excessive tension and fear triggered her asthma, but fortunately, Arita appeared in time to catch Mayo before she fell. Arita gently handed her a handkerchief and then placed his hand on her head. Arita seemed to use some magical gift that instantly calmed Mayo down. When Mayo came to her senses, the strange man had already disappeared. Upon learning of this, Kudo angrily went to Miyo's family. He announced that he would marry Mayo in a grand ceremony and warned Miyo's father to restrain his family from harming her again. Moreover, these people must atone for their previous misdeeds towards Mayo, or he would sever all ties with their family. As Kudo was leaving, he happened to meet Kaya. Just a glimpse of his side face caused Kaya to instantly fall for him. She eagerly asked her mother, only to learn that the extremely handsome man was Miyo's fiancé. Kaya stood there in a daze, feeling intense jealousy and resentment, and began to devise a sinister plan. By the time Kudo returned home, it was already late at night, and he heard Mayo having nightmare. Mayo kept murmuring her aunt's name, the only relative who was kind to her, but who had been driven out of the house after her mother died. Mio's forehead was covered in beads of sweat, and deep tear stains remained at the corners of her eyes. Holding her cold hand, Kudo couldn't help but feel a bit worried. Suddenly, a strange and powerful energy flashed and disappeared, making him even more curious about the secrets this girl might be hiding. The next day, Kudo sent his subordinates to find Mio's aunt and bring her to their home. Seeing the relative who had treated her like a mother still alive, Mio's sorrow and joy intertwined, finally turning into tears that flowed freely. At that moment, she realized that her life could also have beauty and that she had the right to pursue happiness. Mio immediately went to Kudo and confessed that she didn't have a gift. She also revealed that she had been treated as a servant by her family since childhood and had never received a proper education. Mio was prepared to be rejected and driven away, but even so, she hoped that the man in front of her would really get to know her. However, Kudo didn't care about any of that.
いいのあなたどうでもいい。私たちの間には必要ない。お前に出て行かれては困る。もう少ししたら正式に。嫌か。私とこのまま暮らすのは。
私ここにいたいです。旦那様が許してくださるのならば。
In an instant, the long dormant eyes of the girl sparkled brilliantly. She silently vowed in her heart to love this man with all her life. From then on, Mio visited Kudo, who was busy with his duties, every day and brought him carefully prepared lunches. Every time, Kudo would show a rare smile in front of his subordinates. Watching Kudo eat, Mio's eyes were filled with tenderness, and from then on, this boy completely took residence in her heart. Although Kudo was busy with his duties, he still found time to buy Mio many beautiful clothes, including the pink kimono she had been staring at that day. However, Mio's fate seemed destined to be rocky. Every time her life was about to get on track, misfortune immediately followed. She was suddenly kidnapped at her doorstep, and when the butler arrived, she only saw Mio's shoes scattered on the ground. It turned out that Mio was kidnapped by her stepmother and sister Kaya. They planned to secretly sell Mio so that Kaya could rightfully take Mio's place and marry Kudo. Moreover, Kudo's previous reprimand had shamed them, so they vented their resentment on Mio. The mother and daughter duo wantonly tortured and humiliated Mio, not treating her as family at all. But just when they thought their plan was about to succeed, they didn't know that Kudo had already stormed in.
声をかけても開けるかどうか。
問題ない。
Kudo entered the mansion, searching everywhere for Mio. No one could stop him in his extreme anger. If anything happened to Mio, he would make sure everyone here paid with their lives. Mio's father still foolishly tried to buy time, but Kudo ignored his attacks and sternly demanded to know where Mio was. During their struggle, no one noticed that a gift user who had just been knocked down by Kudo had already been possessed by a mushi. He suddenly erupted with powerful flame energy, instilling fear in everyone. However, in addition to controlling flames, Kudo also had the gift to control ice. With the advantage of elemental superiority, he defeated the opponent in just one move. At that moment, Kaya was still trying to force Mio to give up her engagement with Kudo, but this time, the usually submissive Mio firmly refused. Love had given Mio courage. Even if she had to die, she wouldn't give up the hard-won happiness. Fortunately, Kudo finally found her. Ignoring Kaya's expectant gaze, he tenderly picked up Mio and left. Kaya unwillingly chased after them, unable to understand why she was any less than Mio. She had inherited the family's gift, and being with Kudo would produce stronger bloodlines.
顔だの才能だのどうでもいい。天地がひっくり返ってお前を選ぶことはない。
A few days later, Arita visited Kudo's home as a guest, and Mio was surprised to find that he was the one who had helped her on the street. Seeing the scars on Mio's face, Arita was curious.
これは名誉の負傷です。
Hearing Mio's answer, Kudo felt a warmth in his heart. That scar had become a testament to their deep bond. Witnessing their mutual affection, Arata's face was filled with displeasure. While leaving, Arita suddenly pulled out a paper bird and told Kudo that if he wants to get Mio out of his nightly nightmares, he could go through it to find him. It turned out that the person who had previously spied on Kudo with the paper bird was him. Kudo sensed that there was some special connection between Arita and Mio, so he pulled out Mio's family records and discovered that Mio's mother and Arita came from the same family. At this time, Mio's condition worsened, and she was troubled by nightmares even during the day. Kudo couldn't bear to see her suffer like this. this, so he had no choice but to take her to Arata's family. Arata seemed to have anticipated their return and was already waiting at the door. It turned out that this family, which appeared to be in business on the surface, actually possessed the world's most mysterious gift, capable of controlling other people's minds. The clan leader revealed a startling fact. Mayo, who seemed to have no gift, was actually the most powerful gift user in the entire family. Although Mayo inherited the gift of mind control from her mother, her young mind couldn't bear such a powerful force at the time, so it had to be sealed. This was the root cause of her being plagued by nightmares. If the seal was not lifted soon, Mayo would suffer a backlash from this power, endangering her life. The only ones who could help Mayo resolve this crisis were Arata's family. Although Kudo felt deeply attached and reluctant, he had no choice but to agree to leave her there for the sake of her life. However, when he returned to the Special Forces headquarters, it was already in chaos. His subordinates reported that a large number of Mushi had suddenly invaded, and more than half of the soldiers had been possessed, turning into zombies that fought each other. It turned out that this was all a trap set by the emperor of the country. Gravely ill and with little time left, he feared that the Kudo family's power was too strong and posed a threat to his young heir. So, he deliberately spread Mushi in the city to weaken the Kudo family's power and, in the process, eliminate Kudo. Seeing the situation spiraling out of control, Kudo ordered his subordinates to set up a barrier around the area to prevent the Mushi from spreading to residential areas. However, this also meant that no one within the barrier could use their gifts, forcing Kudo to fight his subordinates with swords. As he watched his former comrades, now unconscious, rush at him, Kudo couldn't bear to kill them, and soon he became covered in wounds. At this time, Mayo overheard Kudo's current predicament by chance. Despite Arata's numerous attempts to stop her, she insisted on going to help Kudo. In her desperation, she released the powerful energy within her, instantly causing Arata to lose consciousness. After escaping from Arata, Mayo ran towards where Kudo was. At the same time, a memory of her mother surfaced in her mind. Amidst the fluttering cherry blossoms, Miyo's mother gently blessed that she would surely find her happiness. At that moment, the seal on Miyo's power was completely lifted. Meanwhile, Kudo was also being pushed to his limits. As he watched his maddened comrades heading towards destruction, he felt powerless. At this critical moment, Mayo finally arrived. She immediately used all her strength to wield her gift, controlling the minds of all the possessed and extracting the Mushi hidden within them. In this way, Kudo and Mayo worked together to eliminate all the Mushi one by one, but Mayo suffered a painful backlash from overusing her gift. Fortunately, Arata arrived in time to help her calm the rampaging power within her. The possessed gift users all regained consciousness, and the lovers, who had endured so many hardships, could finally let go of everything and hold each other tightly. The premise of happiness lies not in what you have, but in whether you have the courage to pursue it. If Mayo had shown a powerful gift at birth, she might not have developed the resilience and kindness forged through suffering, nor would she have met Kudo, who loved her. The once timid girl had transformed into someone brave and determined. The flower of her and Kudo's love, after enduring many storms, finally bloomed brightly.
結婚してもらえるだろうか。
後悔なさいませんか？
するわけないだろう。
ふつつか者ですが、どうぞよろしくお願いします。